But I think we're going to see more and more of these parents who are struggling to make ends meet and wish they had more time to be involved in their children's education, but simply don't.
Again, the diversity of West, the socioeconomic population differences are, as Dr. Denny, are staggering. I think the fact that many students are on free and reduced lunch at many of our schools is an indication that there is an economic issue for a lot of our parents, and they don't have time to engage, even though they wish they could, engage in the education of their children because they're working 2 jobs and sometimes 3 jobs, I believe. If the district could, it should try to find ways to support a healthy family life at home, whether it's helping them with the preschool, pre-day, before school activities and programs, and after school activity and programs, but also through evening programs such as the parent-teachers conferences and meetings, where they are allowed to have a conversation with people that work within the school district, whether it's a teacher or the social worker.
The next question begins with Ms. Guy. Two district elementary schools have adopted an innovative school model which reimagines the school experience. Please describe your thoughts on this model and the process by which it has been implemented and expanded.
Well, I've only read about the model. I haven't been able to see it in action. And personally, I love the word innovation. I love things that are creative and outside the box. But I've heard concerns from parents that they don't want their kids to be guinea pigs. And so I think there is some concern that maybe this should have been rolled out in a smaller way, maybe with just one grade level at a time first to see how it's working. Is it effective? Are the kids learning? Are they staying up with their peers that are in other schools under other models? And then to have the second school, Rising Star, roll out the next year before we had a full year's data in from Apache first, I think has raised some concerns as well. So there may be something really great in there. I just don't think we have enough information yet to know if there's something really great happening there. And so I think there's still a little bit of concern that maybe these kids are being guinea pigs until we figure out how effective this is.
I had the opportunity to go over to Apache and tour the school with the principal, Ms. Lewis. I was involved in the construction of Apache, and so knew the building pretty well. But my experience in walking through, I was a little concerned when I saw the library turned into a crafts room. That bothered me. I was in a 3rd grade class where the third graders are on iPads, and the kids in the row that I was standing behind, they were all just playing on them. That teacher wasn't paying attention to them. I believe collaborative learning is a great idea. I think project-based learning is a great idea as an architect. But it may be good to have it as part of the curriculum. I'm not sure it's right now a good idea to have it be the whole curriculum. I was concerned when I sat in the office with Pam and she told me that the reading scores had gone down 9 points. And I asked her, do you have a summer reading program? And she said, no. I said, well, you've got captured kids here. They're coming for free breakfast and lunch. Why don't you take them into the library and start a reading program? And I think that is where we need to look, is integrating the collaborative learning and project-based learning with our traditional learning methodology and teaching methodology.
Well, I'm familiar with Apache. That's when my wife taught for a number of years. She was a paraprofessional in special ed in the old building. And then I think she subbed a little bit in the new building. I actually like Apache, I guess. I like the makerspace. I like some of the challenges that I see in the kids. And I was there one day when Kevin Hansford happened to be my tour guide. And in the makerspace in the library, they were making something. And one of the students came up to Mr. Hansford and said, which is stronger, duct tape or masking tape? And the response was, that sounds like a good experiment. Why don't you figure it out? And I thought, well, that kind of puts learning back on the student a little bit. You don't just ask a question and get an answer. You have to figure stuff out for yourself. So I think it's going to be a pretty good model. I think we're still watching it.
The next question, we'll start with Mr. White. Can you name a decision the board made or has made with which you did not agree? If so, please describe what you believe should have been done.
When the boundary changes happened at Shawano, I had great concern that they took all the single-family homes out of the attendance area. I didn't feel that was healthy for the community. It concentrated a socioeconomic group that I don't think it should be concentrated like that. I was very discouraged by that decision.
This will go back a few years, but I wasn't real pleased when we picked a new name for a new elementary school, and we called it Marion Park. I think we missed an opportunity. The South Park School is in an area of the district that back in, even before Brown versus Board of Education, was historic. And there was a teacher by the name of Corinthia Nutter. And her story is well documented at the school and the library. But I thought we missed a heck of a learning opportunity to name that school for Ms. Nutter. I had the opportunity one time years ago when she was still living to meet her, and even in her 90s, this is a teacher to be reckoned with.
I also disagreed with the boundary changes for Shawano. I know that there are so many factors that have to be taken into consideration when you're doing boundary changes, but to me that felt like it should have been one of the decisions that was hands-off from the beginning, because it did wipe out all the single-family homes in that attendance area. I guess as a second, if I had to pick a second one, going back to last fall and the decision that the teachers were not supposed to wear safety pins in the schools, I think is another decision I disagreed with. I think that they were a symbol for safety, and I think the public could have been educated about that, and that could have let people know that we want all of our teachers to be seen as safe people, so that any child who is fearful of anything knows that a teacher is a safe person to go to. And so I think that was mishandled and could have been handled a lot better.
This is the final question from the predetermined question portion of this forum, and this will begin with Mr. Denny. What do you think the board should look for in a new superintendent?
Well, the board is responsible for conducting a search, and that process will involve engaging a professional search firm. Having been a part of 2 previous searches, I know that the search firm will engage the community. We will ask all of our represented groups, teachers, administrators, parents with students in the district, patrons who don't have students in the district, business leaders, chamber members. We'll ask each of those groups to develop a profile. And the board will have the opportunity to develop a profile too, but it's not really our choice or our decision as to what that profile is. We want all the community involved. I would expect we would find from this group that we'll want a superintendent that is honest, that is communicative, that's open, that's trustworthy, that would be able to be a good communicator, to be in touch with the community.
I agree. I think right off the bat, the new superintendent is going to have to work to rebuild some trust in the district, trust between teachers and administrators, and trust between parents and the school board and the superintendent. And so we need somebody that is going to be aware that communication has to be key. Someone who's going to reach out to teachers who have felt kind of disenfranchised for several years now, and work, I think, to correct an imbalance on the number of administrators we have and what their roles are, and the lack of administrative support that teachers feel. I think some of those jobs need to maybe be reassigned or just combined into different types of positions so that the classroom teachers feel like they have more direct support from the administrator. So I think someone coming in aware of what the district is going through with some ideas on how to create this trust, rebuild this trust, is going to be one of the key things we're looking for.
I would like to see someone who believes in academic excellence and who is dedicated to educating children through the public school system. I would also like to see someone, as they have said, who is honest and who is collaborative and is communicating and who can rebuild the trust that we've had in our district before between the administration, the community, and the school board. I would also like to see someone who goes out into the schools and spends time in the schools and spends time with teachers in the classroom. I think that would be really helpful to build that relationship between our new superintendent and the community and the schools, the different schools and teachers. I would also like to see somebody who empowers people, who empowers the teachers, who empowers our community to do great stuff and to really excel in educating our kids. It's our responsibility as a community to hire someone who believes in our culture and who understands our culture and is curious about our culture. Thank you.
Thank you. That ends the predetermined question phase of this forum. We will move on to questions posed by the audience. I have a bunch of index cards up here, and so I will begin asking those questions. Again, for transparency's sake, I'll just explain if I see questions. I kind of ask the same thing. I'll ask one question representative of those questions that kind of fall under the same topic or theme. There are several questions up here, though, that are kind of singletons, that are unique questions, so I'll also try to get to those as well. Good news is we do have plenty of time, so I think we will be able to get to all these questions up here. You guys are very efficient answers, I'll say that. Denise has had a very easy job tonight. She did not have such an easy job last time. Okay, so the audience-generated questions, there were several questions regarding teacher pay, so I will ask one question about that, and this will begin with Ms. Gavi. Every year, administrators have received significant pay raises. Teachers have not received a pay raise in 9 years. Again, reading from this card, hoping I get the handwriting correct. You as a new board member can be helpful in supporting teacher pay raises. What ways can you advocate for teacher pay raises?
Well, it comes down to priorities, and those decisions have to be made about where to spend funds. To me, teachers are an obvious place where you want to put the bulk of your money because they are the people who are working with our children day in and day out. They are the ones who have the training and the certification to educate our children. So I think they have to be compensated. Nobody goes into teaching to get rich. I've never met one person who goes into teaching to get rich, but they are professionals and they want to be able to afford a home one day. They want to be able to have a decent car. They want to be able to take a vacation. They want to be able to plan for their future, and they should be able to do that. And so I think we need to give them compensation that will allow them to live as a professional is expected to live in this community. So if that means that maybe we take some money that has been given to administrators and give some of that to teachers, I would be in favor of that. I think maybe there is some imbalance there that needs to be corrected.
There is a sense of unbalance in the pay between the teachers and the administrators. Our administrators are paid very well. They have done a great job over the years. We have a community that is known for its excellence in education. We want to attract professional administrators, and to do that, you have to pay them. But you also have to do that to attract qualified and competent teachers as well. And so I think Laura's comment, we went from 11 administrators, I think, council level administrators to 28, something like that. And I think there is a feeling that we may be top heavy a little bit. And so as we go down the road, it might be the board's responsibility to take a look at this and see what they can do to combine some of the responsibilities, reduce the number of administrators and bring it back maybe into a more appropriate line, and take that money and funnel it to teacher pay.
I think perhaps there's a little bit of a misconception when I hear people say teachers have not gotten a raise. It is true that we have not truly changed the salary schedule, but we've neither frozen teachers on that schedule either. And that happened under, I think, Dr. Kaplan's regime as well as Dr. Johnson's a couple of times when we really got hammered by the state with reductions. We start negotiations with NEA, and when we complete those negotiations and both teams have agreed upon an amount of money, whether it goes in terms of step increase or column movement, that percentage is applied to our administrators as well. So there's not an imbalance in the raises. When we have an administrator that gets a raise, it's because they've taken on some additional duties or their title has changed.
This is a question related to the school board itself. And this will begin with Mr. White. How do you think the incoming board can foster transparency so parents and other citizens don't feel, quote, stonewalled at board meetings?
There was a change in the last board meeting where the board had an opportunity to listen to some administrators present some background on some of the decisions that were being made and approved by the board. I think that as we go into the future, there may be certain questions that in open forum, if a viable question is answered and there is an administrator sitting here that can answer that question, the board doesn't necessarily have the ability to have the data at hand to answer certain questions. But we have had administrators sitting here on the panel and in the back that can answer the questions, whether it's about demographics, whether it's about curriculum, whether it's about IT, teacher training. We have the administrators here at the board meetings that might be able to answer the questions. And if those questions are presented ahead of time, we might be able to funnel those questions to those administrators so that they have an opportunity to either prepare an answer, look it up, and then present that at the appropriate time during the board meeting.
I think it's always easier to answer a question if you kind of have an idea of who and what it's about. As Mr. White said, if we can have the administrator there with the data at hand, we're more than happy to have them answer the question. Board members don't have an answer to every question at every meeting. And we have to rely on administration or somebody else to look that up or get it to us. We'll answer what we can, but most of the time we can't.
I agree that moving things off of consent agenda and into the regular scheduled board meeting is helpful, and I think that's what a lot of parents have been asking for because they feel like there are conversations happening and there's no transcript of it, there's no way for them to even know what was happening. So to move more things from consent agenda onto the regular agenda of the board meeting, I think is one of the helpful things that the board can do. I think the public forum time, again, I agree with Chris that if there's an opportunity, if someone is there, sitting there in the meeting who can address that concern, can answer that question, they should have an opportunity to do that. If not, then whoever is following up with that person, I think the response should be made public so that everyone who was in that meeting has an opportunity to see what the response was. Maybe it should go on the website or somewhere public so that they know what the response was to the question that the person raised during the public forum time. I think this will help parents feel like these decisions aren't being made in secret.
Next question starts with Mr. Denny and is on a similar topic, maybe a bit more pointed. Can you explain how or to what degree FERPA applies specifically to discussing school administrators during an open meeting?
I wish I could remember what FERPA meant.
The Federal Education Right to Privacy Act?
Well,
Something similar to that?
I think there was an issue that came up at open forum in the meeting prior to the last one, I think. We are sensitive as a school district to what information we can release about students. We are also sensitive when it comes to personnel issues that affect our staff. There are certain things we just don't talk about. And if we did, we'd be in trouble. So we try and limit those comments on those issues. If a student by name is mentioned, I think we get a little nervous that that becomes a public issue. Same with personnel issues.
Well, since I'm not on the board and I haven't been educated on all of the ins and outs of FERPA, I can only take a stab at it. I do know that student privacy has to be protected, but I think the question was specifically about administration. So personnel issues, again, I think have to be protected if it's a personnel issue. But I think there might be other types of questions parents might have about what is the job description of this person? What is the role of this person? What are they supposed to be doing to help us understand? I think there might be questions like that that could possibly be raised that wouldn't violate FERPA, but again, I'll need to learn more about it.
I think this is relating to a certain incident at a board meeting not long ago. I was very surprised at how the questions were asked at people. I don't think it's appropriate to address a concern to one particular person. I think it would have been best if it would have been a general question about how something should be handled or why it was handled in a certain way, as opposed to about a particular person. Because there's other ways to handle those kinds of questions that are, let's say, respectful of the person's privacy. There's ways to ask questions that are considerate of the circumstances that a person might be in. I just was surprised at how the question was posed. And it can be posed in a much more polite way, I think, and still get a good answer.
Thank you. The next question will start with Ms. Guy. Several questions in regards to school funding. If the school district gets additional funds from the state, what would you say should be the top 2 to 3 priorities for those funds?
Well, I think sitting down with NEA and talking about what the teachers think is a fair and adequate compensation package. If we haven't been able to adequately meet that for the past several years, I think that's where we start. How can we rectify that and bring that up where it needs to be? I think investing in some more technology for some of the classes, especially at the senior high level, that require some of the more advanced technology to the vocational classes, things like that, putting some resources behind that so that they can remain cutting edge and move right into careers if that's what they want to do, or get more education following graduation. And then beyond that, I think if we actually did have money and we had opportunities to think about how to spend it, which just sounds so foreign to a school board, I mean, to me, that's another great opportunity for a community forum to say, look, we actually have some money to meet not only our urgent needs, but maybe to think about some future needs that we could start to address. Let's get some input from the community and talk about what we might do with that.
I think the idea of providing better compensation for our teachers, providing classroom support for students and teachers, and then as we go down the road, see where we can reestablish a high level of paras and in-classroom assistance for special needs kids.
Well, I think teacher compensation is going to be high on that list, and that does a couple of things. It does help our current teachers. It allows us to hire additional teachers, which should reduce class size, and that's been a big issue. I think the support, whether it's reading teachers, other title teachers, social workers, counselors, whatever we need that should help support our students. Our challenge is that we have a very diverse group of students, and their needs are greater than they probably were 5 or 10 years ago.
Thank you. This next question will start with Mr. White. A few questions regarding, I guess for lack of a better term, teacher morale. The first question will be a bit more practical. After that is another more philosophical question. The first question, describe ways you would allow or find out the concerns of the teachers so they can be heard, and quoting here, not just relying on administrator issues. So finding out the concerns of teachers, how would you do it?
I think we're at a point of transition, and I think the atmosphere within the district is going to improve as we go down the road. How would we find out what, I think teachers are very vocal about what they think and what they feel. And I don't think it would be that hard to find out what it is that concerns them the most. We have many concerns within our district and issues that can be addressed by communicating, by talking, by having meetings with the building staff through, again, the advisory council could be reestablished. And that is, would be a wonderful way to have a conversation or have a medium for a conversation. I think there should be community forums to find out what it is that people are concerned about. We have a very well-educated community. I don't think it's a problem for them to come out and converse about what their concerns are. But it has to be convenient for the time frame. The accessibility to that meeting is very important, and it maybe needs to be on a elementary school attendance level or area attendance levels to find out what the diverse communities within our district are really concerned about.
Over the years, I've had a number of teacher friends who've had my daughters, who knew my wife, who were not particularly shy about explaining things to me. And I would welcome that again. I wander through schools and I see some folks that I know, but after the kids graduated, I don't know quite as many teachers as I used to on a first name basis.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Describe ways you would allow or find out the concerns of the teachers so they can be heard.
Yeah, I think ask them. For myself, I just found some teachers and invited them for coffee, and we just met, and I just asked them, what are your concerns? What are your struggles? What do you wish for the district? What do you wish for your school? What do you wish for your classroom? And they love sharing that because nobody asks them those questions. I mean, nobody other than other teachers that are family members. And so they love that opportunity because they have so many ideas. They have so many things that they would love to suggest or concerns they want to share, and they have just felt kind of shut down, I think. So creating those opportunities, I think you buy a bunch of bagels and some coffee and just say, hey, come talk to us and tell us, what are your ideas, what are your concerns, how can we partner with you and help you be more effective in what you do in the classroom.
The next question will begin with Mr. Denny. This was the more philosophical question. Is teacher compensation mainly an issue of competing successfully in the labor market, mainly about respecting teachers, both, or something else? What is teacher compensation mainly about? How is it measured?
I thought this for years, and I think it is. Most people, once they get a job, they keep a job because they like the people they work with and for. And if that's the case, then sometimes compensation in terms of dollars and benefits becomes secondary because they like going to work, they like what they do, and they have a family atmosphere. So that's the atmosphere that I've felt at the job I've been at for 44 years. I'd probably go back and do it all over again. And I'd like to see if we can develop that sort of a camaraderie and family atmosphere throughout the district.
As I said earlier, I don't know one teacher who got into that profession to get rich. That's not why people get into education. But they are professionals and they do want to be compensated in such a way that, like I said, they can live this middle class life. And for so many of them, they've had to take on second jobs. They've had to do other things in order to have the income to be able to buy a home and get a car and go on vacation and save for retirement and all of that. So I think compensation is both. The answer to the question is it's both. It's symbolic in the sense that the things we value, we give money towards. If we value our teachers, we're going to give money towards their compensation to tell them that they're important to us. But it's also for them, it's their living. It's what they need in order to survive and raise their own kids. So I think it's both.
I also believe it's both. Compensation is just not a paycheck. It's how they are supported in the classroom, what kind of resources they might have. I know a lot of teachers spend a lot of their own money on supplies, and maybe we figure out a way that they don't have to do that. But that kind of support, I think, also goes into allowing them to use their compensation for themselves as opposed to in the classroom, paying for stuff in the classroom. Respect is a wonderful thing. To be treated with respect is recognition of someone's abilities and someone's education and someone's successes in the classroom. And I truly believe that the teachers in our district deserve every bit of respect that we can offer them.
The next question will go to Ms. Guy first. The remaining questions don't really fall neatly into a category, but they're just as valuable and interesting. How do you feel about the district's moving away from having certified librarians in schools?
I talked with some parents about this too. What they described is some libraries are being turned into maker spaces, but they also said that librarians' job descriptions are changing, and even the libraries themselves may not have as many books as they used to have. And so they see this as a trend, as maybe we're getting rid of actual physical books, and we'll just put all the books on their devices, and we won't need the space to store the books. But again, parents have concerns about that because you're talking about more screen time. It's, and we don't want our kids just plugged in, sitting in front of a screen all day long, even if it's reading a book. There's also something, I think, tangible about a parent and child interacting over a book together that you can hold in your hands together, that you can turn the pages together. And I think we're going to miss out on some of that if we don't have the libraries, we don't have the kids checking out books, taking them home, having a family member read with them at night. So I love books, and I support books, and I support librarians, and I think there needs to always be a place in our schools for them. Maybe their job will change somehow in the future, but I hope we will always hold on to physical, actual books, and the librarians we need to help kids check those books out and take them home and fall in love with reading.
One of my favorite things to design in my career was libraries, and I've designed libraries for dozens of schools. Librarians don't just deal with the books, they deal with the kids who are trying to figure out what they want to read or what excites them. They guide the children to places that they might not go. I believe in books as well, and I think there is what should always be a place in an educational system for a library. Whether it's an elementary school library or middle school library or a high school library. They're all very different. And visiting the makerspace at Apache caused me great concern. It felt like a crafts room. The kids were gluing paper towel tubes to construction paper to make jungles for monkeys, because they were studying monkeys. But there were sewing machines in the library. They weren't using the library as a library. And that really caused me great concern. Librarians are an integral part of education because they guide students to a literary place. And I think we should always think of them as an integral part of our educational system.
I am afraid that this is one of those issues that evolution rather than revolution is causing us to move in another direction. I know that we have created at North a collaboration space, more so than a library. There was concern over that change. But I do think that as we evolve as a school district, as we evolve as a society, and as technology begins to be more prevalent in our everyday life, we're going to find that we need a different set of skills. And we hope we're making the appropriate changes as we go.
The next question, we'll start with Mr. White. It's a two-part question from the same person related to digital learning. So part one, what is being done to assure that classrooms get online in a timely manner? This person, I've observed kids in one section of an SFT classroom, which I'm assuming Santa Fe Trails, one class there be unable to access the lesson. So what is being done to assure that classrooms can get online in a timely manner?
I'm not quite sure how to answer that question. I'm sure that our district has extremely talented IT people, and because of the rollout, it may be a temporary circumstance for we need to increase the bandwidth maybe for that area. I'm not quite sure why different parts of a classroom might not be able to get online, but the district has an IT department that should be able to handle that. I'm not quite sure why they wouldn't.
I don't have a specific answer to this question, but I think it likely has something to do with bandwidth and number of modems and just how many devices are on at a given time. The more devices that get on, the slower the pipe is. If you think of it as a pipeline, you can only get so much water through a 2-inch line, you get a lot more water through a 5-inch line.
Yeah, I have no insight into the answer of why there was this particular problem. I was just sitting here thinking, boy, as a teacher, then you always have to have a backup plan. If your plan is to use technology and the technology fails, you have to have a backup plan, and which sort of feels like double planning for the teachers for me. I'm not sure how that works. I'm not sure what they do when the lesson was planned for technology and the technology isn't working. I would assume that they have something they can fall back on. But again, if we move to become more and more dependent on technology, what's going to happen in those moments when the technology fails us?
So part two of this digital learning question, starting with Mr. Denny, what is being done or what should be done to make sure all kids have online access at home so they can do their homework?
What should be done?
And what is being done?
I can't tell you. I mean, there are cities that are working on essentially citywide free Wi-Fi. It's being rolled out slowly, if at all, and I'm not sure that the district has the resources to do anything beyond what we can do with our own buildings. We do have accessible internet sites at public libraries and in our own buildings, but I really don't see the school district formulating a plan to create free internet district-wide in the entire community. I think that's a resource that has to come from collaboration with others.
I think, yeah, there's no way for teachers to assume at this point that their students are all going to have internet access once they leave the school building. They do have libraries and other public places where they might be able to access it, but you can't expect a child to, or the parents to drive the kid around town to find places where they can connect to Wi-Fi so they can do their homework. So I think at this point, until we have a citywide free Wi-Fi or something that everyone can access, the assumption has to be that the children will not have Wi-Fi access at home, so the teachers can't assign homework that requires it, or give them time during the school day to get it done. But there's just going to be that inequality until there's something dramatic like free Wi-Fi for everyone.
It is unfortunate that some families in our community don't have access to Wi-Fi at home. There are opportunities maybe to work with foundations within the district at certain areas to see if they can't help and families provide access to Wi-Fi. My wife and I visited a family recently that the 9-year-old was upset because he didn't have Wi-Fi, and his dad just said, "Hey, the modem's broken." And we kind of figured that they just didn't have the money for it. And so there may be opportunities that the foundation might be able to help certain families if it were necessary, but I don't think we can do it for everyone, but I think there should be some way down the road for the district to consider alternative ways to provide access to Wi-Fi, or figure out ways for the students to not have to have access to Wi-Fi to do their homework.
The next question, we'll start with Ms. Guy. How do we ensure curriculum is available across all schools, i.e. robotics, learning to code, and shark dissection? So how do we ensure curriculum is available across all schools?
All schools and not just in certain schools.
That's the implication.
Okay. I don't know what the specific requirements are for a room that can handle shark dissection. I assume you need some pretty high-tech instruments. You need specific types of tables. You need specific types of tools. So I can understand why maybe we can't afford to put those in all of the high schools. Again, if we get fully funded through the state and federal government, that might be a fantastic way to invest some of that money to make sure that all of the high schools have access to that same kind of technology, can offer those classes so students don't have to come across town to take those classes. They can take it in their local high school.
One of the ways that the district has maybe looked at advanced programs where we need advanced facilities is here at the Academic Center with the signature programs. I believe that as we designed the buildings and provided facilities around the district, each attendance area was treated very equally. Now, when you get to curriculum, it means teachers, and how do we provide teachers to provide that, to teach that curriculum equally throughout the district? I think the district's done a very good job of that. I'm hoping that I think they can continue to do so. But it is the district's policy to provide this equal education to all the students throughout the district. And I think they've done a good job of that over the last 50 or 60 years.
We have a curriculum that pretty much spans all of our elementary, all of our middle, all of our high schools. When you get to the signature programs, it is true that prior to this coming academic year, we had signature programs based in different high schools. And so we had Project Lead the Way at South, so we had the biotechnology program at West. What we're able to do with this facility is move all of the signature programs here. It allows our students to continue to be enrolled in their home high school, South, West, North, and only travel here for the signature program. So if somebody wanted in the West area to be in pre-engineering, they almost had to transfer to South. And sometimes that creates a dilemma. they were raised a Viking, they want to stay a Viking. So there's a little bit of selfishness in that, but I do think that the center here, we're really looking forward to having an open house this fall where we can highlight all of the students that are here too.
The next question will begin with Mr. White, and I will say this is the last audience question. That's not a repeat of a question that's already been asked. We do have a little bit of time. It's perfectly fine if we end a little early. If you do have a question, though, that you are really burning and it has not been asked, you can write it down and run it up here, and I can ask it. So that time is still available. But so far, this is the last question from the audience. It begins with Mr. White. What would you do to improve engagement and communication with parents and members of the community that have language barriers, cultural barriers, and time constraints, i.e. working multiple jobs?
That is a tough question. In the past, we've had advisory council. We've had attendance area forums. We've had PTA meetings that have allowed us to have opportunities to discuss concerns and issues. The issue with members of our community who have the difficulty with, have a language barrier and feel uncomfortable maybe coming to a public meeting or public forum, there might be opportunities to work with individual parents to come up with a plan for them to be able to meet at odd times or off days with either their child's teachers or with a administrative member to come up with a plan to be able to communicate with them. We have a large Hispanic community where there's a lot of family members that don't speak English well enough to be able to communicate some of their concerns or find out what is going on with their child. We have folks in the district that are translators throughout the district for different schools that work to provide that ability to communicate, and I think they've done a pretty good job in the past in providing the translators. I've been actually asked to be a translator for Farsi, but I'm not sure I can do it. But again, we have come up with ideas and ways to allow them to communicate.
So the question again was,
what would you do to improve engagement and communication with parents and members of the community who have language barriers, cultural barriers, and time constraints, i.e. working multiple jobs?
I would like to compliment John Douglas, our Chief of Safety and Security. He's the retired Chief of Police in Overland Park, and he, as the chief, he developed a number of collaborative relationships. He has brought those relationships with him. And so Ms. Goodburn and I this summer earlier had an opportunity to meet with El Centro. And we've had an opportunity to visit with NAACP. And we are looking at more collaboration with more diverse groups to open those lines of communication. The chief would tell you that having those lines of communication open and working made it much easier when a crisis arose because we have the ability to talk to folks. And I think improving those kinds of communications will help us further.
We do have to try to accommodate people with whatever their needs are in order for those lines of communication to be open. So obviously if it's work schedule, we have to find a time that's going to work for them. If it's a language barrier, we need to provide the translators that are there. But the cultural differences, I think, is a bigger issue, and I think that takes more investment to truly understand a culture that might be different from our own. We've had several cross-cultural experiences with my church, with meeting members of the Muslim community from Turkey, and we've shared meals together. And so over those meals, we get to learn and understand more about their culture, and they learn and understand more about ours. And so I think as we're encountering more and more diverse cultures in our schools, more and more countries that students are coming from, and the languages that they speak, there's going to be a need for us to actually engage those cultures, learn about them, And some of that may have to happen in a more informal setting, may have to happen more around meals, and may have to happen in ways that are less structured so that those families can become comfortable with the educators, and the educators can get to know those families and those cultures as well.
Thank you. That is the audience question portion of the forum, and we will move now to closing statements, starting with Mr. Denny. Going down the line, each candidate will get 2 minutes to give a concluding statement.
Well, first of all, I really want to thank County Missionary Council PTA for hosting us tonight. This has been informative, I think, for me, and I hope for you. It's a short time until August 1st, and then there'll be 2. We just don't know which 2 yet. But I do thank you, and I encourage you all to go and vote on August 1st.
I thank you all for being here too. Sometimes a school board primary, I guess, doesn't seem all that exciting or all that interesting to the general public. Why would you spend an evening coming listening to candidates for a school board primary? But when I think back on my own life, I think back, my mother was a public school teacher, and she taught in Des Moines, but even though she was employed by the school district, she didn't teach in a public school. She taught in a school that was run by the Salvation Army. And the reason was because in that era, when girls became pregnant in high school, they weren't allowed to stay in high school. They had to move them to this other school. And so Mom taught those girls, and the Salvation Army provided a nursery to take care of those babies after they were born. But it was the school board that made that decision, that those girls weren't allowed in the school. And then later on, Mom was one of the first, in the first group that went to an alternative high school when those were brand new. And so a school board made that decision to have this new kind of education opportunity for the kids who couldn't make it in a traditional classroom, to have a second chance to try to get their diplomas so that they could graduate and go out into the world. And in my own life, in 2nd grade, my parents sat me down and explained to me that there's a disparity in the schools in the Des Moines school system, and the suburban school where I went was all white kids, and there were schools in the urban core